Jim Halfpenny here. I'm a scientist educator who has lived and worked at the North Gate to Yellowstone, Gardner, Montana, for 54 seasons now. I run a company called A Naturalist's World, and our company supports research and education with our classrooms and the world's largest tracking museum and housing for the researchers from the park. My loves are carnivores, mammals in general, snow, and tracking. Seems like a disparate group of loves, but they all come together because where you get cold, you get snow. And where you get carnivores and snow, you get tracks. So the three have been wound into a tight bundle for all of my career. During that time, I've been fortunate enough to translate a lot of my field experiences into books, bears, wolves, tracking, winter, and many more books and videos that you can find at our website, tracknature.com. Probably two of the most well-known are the wolf chart and the compilation of wolf charts representing the 25th anniversary of wolves reintroduced into Yellowstone National Park. That book is called Charting Yellowstone Wolves, and from that book, we have all of this on Ancestry.com for those that would like to follow the wolf genealogy. Now I'm going to take you on a journey, though. Listen.
Enchanted by the land of Yellowstone, Yellowstone, I hear you calling.
The Last Cold is a chapter in a book I'm writing. It's not a book about the last viral infection. This is not a story of a miracle cure for COVID or RSV or the flu. It's an autobiographical look, a book that I'm writing about the last. Unfortunately, my life in the field has been one of dealing with the last wolf, the last wolverine, the last lynx, the last grizzly, all gone from Colorado, which is now but a mountainous state. But those are stories for another time. I've traveled from the Antarctic to the Arctic looking for cold and snow and ice, looking for the cryosphere, the cryo world, the cold world, the white world. In this video, I'm going to cover the Yellowstone chapter of The Last Cold. I've lived most of my life in the Greater Yellowstone Ecosystem. I've been cold. I've seen snow. I've seen ice. As I'm on my 79th trip around the sun, I've been thinking about cold for a long time. Now I'm going to take you on my personal journey from the prairie to the mountains, including the Friars, the Tetons, the Wind Rivers, the Beartooths, the Absarokas. It's a story of cold and snow and ice, but it's a story of beauty. It's a journey that neither man nor woman can ever do again. No one will ever see or do what I've done. Mine, it's a bold claim, but sadly it's true. No one else will ever make my journey again. Journey now with me through my personal timeline of the last cold, the last snow, the last ice. The year was 1955, plus or minus, when my journey with cold began. I grew up on the Great Plains of Nebraska, just west of the border with Wyoming, in a town called Scottsbluff. Scottsbluff was named for an early explorer who died at Scottsbluff National Monument, which was my backyard for hiking. The monument is a sedimentary set of buttes laced with thick layers of Yellowstone volcanic ash. Scottsbluff was a small town with a small library. Haunting the halls of the library, I read every book on natural history, mountain climbing, the Antarctic, and the Arctic, which fed my curiosity and building love of cold. I remember taking a ruler out in the backyard to measure the increasing depth of snow as it fell. 10 inches, 11 inches, 12 inches. I was hooked on the transient white material brought on by cold. The Oregon Trail crossed the monument, and I grew up on tales of pioneers headed west. One particular tale fascinated my interest in cold. The summers were hot and dry for the pioneers walking their wagons west. It was said that the immigrants mined ice at the ice springs, later known as the ice slough. Having made the obligatory Yellowstone trip in 1957, I learned the ice springs were in Wyoming near Split Rock. The year was 1966 when I journeyed to the ice slough. There I found that water flows through the marsh grasses to the Sweetwater River. During the cold Wyoming winter, the waters froze deep below the peat and remained froze during the summer. In the early 1800s, pioneers would halt their journeys to mine ice to replenish their water supplies. The mining was simple. Pull back the thick peat, and underneath, insulated from the sun, was clean, fresh ice. Today, the ice springs are gone due to the trampling of the peat by wild horses, then livestock grazing, and finished off by climate warming. Never again will people mine ice under the August sun. The winter and the potential for mountain climbing were early favorite activities of mine. The year was 1965. That summer, the magic of the Tetons grabbed me, their grandeur, their height, 13,595 feet above sea level, and their year-round snow. My thoughts turned to what they would be like in the winter. While at the University of Wyoming, and because of my background at the Colorado Outward Bound School, Paul Petzold of the newly formed National Outdoor Leadership School invited me to join the New Year's Day climb of the Grand Teton. So in December of 1965, I was off to join Noel to climb the Grand Teton. We skied to above tree line by the Middle Teton, where the snow became shallow enough to walk, and then on to the hut. The hut was a simple place. Life was simple but cold. The meager heat of the Coleman lantern melted our frozen breaths off the wall. We traversed a glacial moraine to and from on our climbs and managed to climb towards the top. Note here, we were climbing through rime frost-coated rocks, and there's a climber rappelling back down off the top of the mountain. Never again will the glacier grace the upper sides of the moraine we walked on. The year was 1969. In December, I led the University of Wyoming Outing Club into the Gannett Peak region deep in the heart of the Wind River mountain range. Gannett Peak is the highest point in Wyoming at 13,804 feet above sea level. We skied in from the Shoshone-Arapaho Reservation and finally up Sacagawea Glacier. There we dug snow caves to live in during our stay. Our goal was to bag as many winter first ascents as we could, but we only got to climb one first ascent. That was Mount Sacagawea. The view from the top of Fremont Peak and its glacier was magnificent. The basin for the Fremont Glacier is relatively flat, and ice does not flow downhill. Thus, the ice accumulates for hundreds, thousands, or more of the years. During drilling through the glacier in more recent summers, has revealed an ice core record that showed the temperature shift for the end of the Little Ice Age occurred in but 10 short years. It had crossed a tipping point. Andrew Fountain's recently published study of the Sacagawea Glacier showed dramatic reduction of ice and splitting into small remnants of ice. The blue overlay shows the extent of the glacial ice in 2017. Fountain's more recent analysis showed remnant ice in red and yellow. The remnant ice is now but a few broken pieces of the original Sacagawea Glacier. The yellow line shows our route up and across the Sacagawea Glacier to make the first winter ascent of Mount Sacagawea. Never again will Sacagawea be a complete glacier. I want to take you deep below ground into the realm of ice caves. Caves exist worldwide, but few are coated with permanent ice. We will visit two of them. The year was 1972. The place was the ice cave of the Grand Tetons with a mile of underground ice passages. There are two types of ice in caves, liquid water and water vapor. Liquid water ice is dangerously slick. Here we are putting on crampons, ice spikes, for traversing the ice-covered floor. Seasonal flowing water created humongous stalactites and stalagmites, perhaps hundreds of years old or older. One particular stalactite was 10 feet in diameter, and by crawling in at the base, a person, Steve here, could get inside. We'd all turn off our lights except the person inside. What appeared was a shimmering, blue, 20-foot tall icicle. Dropping deeper into the cave, we'd have to rappel down a rope over the liquid water ice. That's me on the rappel. Deep in the dark below, a mixture of ice appeared. Liquid water ice on the floor and vapor hoarfrost ice on the ceiling. The area of mixed ice we called the crystal anteroom.
From there, we belly crawled through a small ice tunnel into the crystal room. This is a view looking back towards the entrance crawl hole. Hoarfrost covered not only the ceiling, but the walls and the floor. Over time, perhaps even millennia, hoarfrost crystals falling from the ceiling covered the floor to crotch deep. What I had given for a camera phone back then, but we did do this photo by using lights, turning them off one at a time and moving around to show the crystal room. Hoarfrost crystals were the size of dinner plates and perfect in symmetry. Never again have I seen such crystals. Never again will the hoarfrost grace the Teton ice cave because the ice cave is gone. Opening a passage to warm air melted all the ice out. The year was 2012. Wild horses roamed the plains and the Pryor Mountains, a bit east of the Greater Yellowstone Ecosystem. There I know of 3 caves. At least one on Forest Service land is now structured for visitation with a wooden ramp down into the cave. This cave has a good annual summer flow of water, which turned to ice, which, the last time I was there, lasted into or through the summer. The question is, how long will these ice caves last before never again will they present ice for the visitor? Now to my home country, where I now reside in the Greater Yellowstone Ecosystem. Let's travel now by skis across Yellowstone. The year was 1971. Yellowstone National Park was opening for the first time for overnight lodging and visitation at Old Faithful. This is what the South Gate looked like that winter as we started our operation. Back from Vietnam and on my skis again, I joined Pat and John Nix to establish Quiet Country Ski Tours. It was a great time with few visitors that would ski. With nearly daily snowfall, we broke new trails almost every day, and the only trails we made were those made by my guides and myself. Locations were pristine, such as this morning at West Thumb. Note the temperature inversion holding down the fireplace smoke from Jackson Hole. After 2 years, we sold out to the Waikiki company, who became Xanterra and now runs the shop, which is known as the Bear's Den. I left Quiet Country for more and greater adventures that the National Outdoor Leadership School could offer me. There, I set up extended educational tours on skis across Yellowstone. We did 2 and 3 week trips. These were educational trips teaching about winter camping and ecology, and often were over 100 miles in length. 15 trips per winter were made. Trips were for beginner skiers and campers. We taught them how to do all this. Each fall, I would cache, by horseback or canoe, 1.5 tons of food and other supplies. 2-week trips got to visit 1 cache. 3-week trips got to visit 2 caches. Students quickly learned to camp and live in the winter. These were not survival trips. These were learning to live in the winter and becoming winter residents. Temperatures were cold, -20, -30, -40. We always hoped to have at least one night of -30 degrees or even -40 degrees to share as an educational experience, and so the students could brag. My favorite memory is of a night ski trip at temperatures lower than -30 degrees Fahrenheit. At midnight, we put on our skis and backtracked the day's previously broken trail. It was full moon and a ski trip that I will never forget. That led to the coldest night of all. It started in the winter of 1978-79, a winter not to forget. That winter was the coldest on record in the continental United States, and it was the coldest night in Yellowstone. The park evacuated everyone as temperature inversions started to trap the Jackson Hole smog and smoke, but we just lived on. -20, -30, -40, -50, -60, -70 degrees Fahrenheit. We woke up that morning with our thermometers telling us it was 70 degrees below zero. That's the temperature at which alcohol thermometers stop working. Our campsite was just east of where the Lewis River exits the falls and flows under the river before turning a 90-degree angle south to Jackson. Admittedly, this is a micro-topographic location, but nonetheless, the cold had settled to -70 degrees Fahrenheit. Never again, I hope, will the temperatures go that low or have a continuous long cold session as we did in the winter of 1978-79. Today, one of the favorite places in the park for winter folks is Lamar Valley. It's the home for wolf watchers. Certainly, many will tell you stories of their long hours waiting in the extreme cold. Let me share one story. This story is the buffalo beds. I'm not going to tell you about Pleistocene-looking bison who sleep their winter in Lamar, but beds at the buffalo ranch. The year was 2000. It was mighty cold out there that morning, but I took my group to Lamar and then to Silvergate for a very brief ski on the Bannock Trail. We skied just so that the group could say they had skied in the extreme cold. Ski had to be brief and careful, though, as it was cold once we were outside our vehicles. After skiing, we stopped at the Buffalo Ranch to visit my colleague, Jim Gary, who was teaching a Yellowstone Institute class. Much to our surprise, we did not find Jim sitting in the classroom, but found all the mattresses from the cabins strewn on the floor, along with everything warm the students had. Heaters were not so good in the cabins in those days, and some of the cabins you could actually see between the logs. It seems it had been very cold, -20, -30, -40, -54 degrees. And to stay warm, everyone had moved all their stuff into the central room, the classroom. Never again, hopefully, we will see temperatures like that at the Buffalo Ranch. The years were the late 1890s. A few of you probably still remember porcelain ice at the Norris Geyser Basin. Most of the ice in Norris Geyser Basin is white, or an off shade of white, but there used to be a spot where the ice, possibly containing some impurity, shimmered blue most of the time. You might have called it turquoise. Now, the blue porcelain ice is gone, perhaps due to a change in the hydrogeothermal regime, or perhaps warming had something to do with this loss. Probably never again will we see it. The year is now. Each winter, Yellowstone Lake freezes over. The water and ice represent an integrated, summarized physical record of temperatures. Temperatures from the spring, summer, fall, and winter. Temperatures of the air, temperatures of the water. It's an integrated record housed in the ice that forms on the lake. The warmer the annual temperatures, the earlier the ice melts out. If we look at the melt-out date for Yellowstone Lake ice, there are two interesting trends. Years are along the x-axis or the bottom axis, and the Julian date of the year, which starts January 1 as the first day of the year and continues to 365, those dates run up the y or left side axis. June 1 is the 152nd day of the year. Through 1975, meltout days were getting later, well into June. But then temperatures tip and the meltout date has been getting earlier on average. Never again will we see consistent late June meltout dates for Yellowstone Lake. Most of you are familiar with late ice in Yellowstone. Drive the northeast entrance road and look carefully to the right into Icebox Canyon. The canyon was so named because its ice features lasted well into the summer. After my obligatory childhood trip in 1957 to Yellowstone, I took up residence in the ecosystem, and the canyon has always had late summer ice, perhaps even through the summer. Let me show you the winter ice. Skis on, we take a non-beginner ski trip up the bottom of the canyon, careful not to fall in. Water from springs seeps through the walls of the canyon. Some are full of organic compounds, coloring the water ice brown. Look further up the river and hints of the magnitude of ice to come reveal themselves. This is what I call the ice throne. Never again will we see ice that lasts through the summer. In my career, I took a sojourn to Colorado, to the Institute of Arctic and Alpine Research, to continue my studies in cold environments. As director of the Mountain Research Station and field director of the long-term ecological program, I spent 12 years studying on Niwot Ridge looking over the Arapahoe Glacier in the upper left. I coordinated studies of climate, atmosphere, plants, animals, snow, ice, and glaciers on a year-round basis. My studies interlaced with frequent summer and winter trips to my beloved Yellowstone. One key element of our work at the research station was atmospheric sampling through programs through NOAA, the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Association. Each dot on the map represents a worldwide location where atmospheric gases are sampled at least weekly. The Hawaii site was the first, and Niwot Ridge, the green star, was the second. Niwot Ridge is where I worked, and Niwot Ridge has the second longest record in the world. Grants I received paid for atmospheric sampling when I was director. Often, I physically did the sampling myself, which in the winter was a long ski trip to above tree line sampling site at 11,000 feet. We called this sampling site T-Van. No matter what the weather, we had to collect samples twice per week. As you can see from the fall and spring pictures, wind and snow were the dominant factors at our small shelter. Many times we crawled on our bellies, not to be blown off the mountain. The atmospheric carbon dioxide graph here shows the amount of carbon dioxide gas in the air from the inception collection of gases to my departure. The trend is obvious. There's a lowering during the summer months when plants suck in the carbon dioxide and turn it to sugar. But overall, the increase from 1968 through 1990 is blatantly obvious. For comparison, I threw in the up-to-date record for the average worldwide concentration of atmospheric CO2. Folks, we are in bad shape, but that's another story. One particular set of studies at the Mountain Research Station was that of Arapahoe Glacier, seen here. Now it is but a few scattered remnants of old ice. Never again will it be a glacier. Back to the Greater Yellowstone Ecosystem and off to the northeast. The Beartooths are an Ice Age glacier-carved landscape of deep canyons and near vertical walls. Some glaciers and permanent snowfields still remain there. Grasshopper Glacier has stories to tell. First, it's a long-term refrigerator storing millions of grasshoppers. Massive flocks of grasshoppers from the Great Plains went into cold shock and fell on the glacier, only to be covered and preserved for hundreds of years. The year was 1990. John Good, who was chief naturalist of Yellowstone National Park, and I saddled the horses with supplies and took our students deep into the Beartooths to visit Grasshopper Glacier. John, in the red hat, taught geology, and I taught alpine ecology and climate change. Students could reach into the lake at the base of the glacier and grab chunks of ice from the outflow and see mummified grasshoppers. John early on had done studies of the Grasshopper Glacier. Perhaps it was his master's thesis. For comparison, we had vintage photos from 1916, postcard photos, John's photos, and the bottom photo is my photo. Recession is obvious over time as the small lake has grown bigger and bigger with time. This aerial photograph by John Skirlock shows what it looks like today. What you see is there's very little dark glacial ice that is still left and a huge lake. Grasshopper Glacier is essentially gone. Never will we see Grasshopper Glacier capturing and archiving grasshoppers. Never again will it be a complete glacier. The year was 1962. Dwight Billings and Philip Johnson studied alpine ecology in the Beartooths. Note the location of this particular snowfield against a backdrop of the Bear's Tooth in the upper left. As part of their studies, they outlined a permanent snowfield marking exposed rocks on the edge of the snow. Then they recorded the edge by week for several years. When I arrived, I found we could still find the Billings snowfield. For most years, I've been able to photograph the Billings snowfield. Now, I'm not sure how long it will accumulate enough winter snow to keep it from melting out each summer. Then it will never be a permanent snowfield again. Snowberg Lake is a lake fed by the Snowberg Permanent Snowfield, which calves off snowbergs into the lake. The annual snowmelt of the snowfield also helps to fill the lake. I first started taking students to the lake in 1992 when the lake was much fuller. The snowbergs and crevasses are fun to explore and experience life on a snowfield. We call it snowberg because the bergs do not have enough density required to meet the definition of an iceberg. Being inside the snowberg crevasses is a thing of exceptional beauty. Regretfully, the recession of the snowfield has been dramatic. Compare the images from 2014, 2015, and 2020. The most significant loss was in 2015. All around the Greater Yellowstone ecosystems, researchers have been documenting similar recessions. Never again will Snowberg Lake fill the lake with berg. How long will permanent snow remain before giving way to only annual winter snow? The snow maze is another particularly incredible place. The year was 2014. This time I'm going to take you not underground, but inside a permanent snowfield we call the snow maze. We'll explore myriads of tunnels within the snow. High in the Beartooth was a massive, non-melting, permanent snowfield. Walking across the snowfield, exposed snow algae living beneath the surface, their blood red color exposed by footsteps. Each summer, the snow melted and a stream exited on the downhill end, cutting a deep trough. Daring explorers that my students were, some would lay on their bellies and crawl a few feet into the opening. Each year, the opening got progressively larger, as Jim Gary shows by looking in. The location of the maze is across from the Beartooth seen in the background. Eventually, the entrance tunnel got big enough we could walk in. Diane and Julianne are wading upstream into the maze. The young, from baby Arya Tersic to older folks, join me for journeys into the snow maze. Myriads of tunnels led off on the side passages. On August 27th, 2014, we again visited the maze. You can see the people walking down towards the entrance. A year later, it was gone. The permanent snowfield was gone. It had melted out in but one short year. Looking back out the entrance now, I realize that I was not smart enough to grasp then. 2014 was the last gasping breaths of the snow maze. Larger, expanding tunnels over the last few years were allowing warm air inside the snowfield. The permanent snowfield was melting from the inside out, much as the ice caves melted when warm air was exposed to them. Permanent snow, remember, lasts over the summer from one winter to the next. How permanent was this snowfield? How long it had been there? The year was 2015. Jim Gary and I explored the basin where the snow maze had lain. There we found 4 piles of scattered bones. After analysis, we believe the bones represented no more than 2 bison, the skull and horns of which are in the top 2 photos. These bones have yet to be radiocarbon dated, but will be. According to Jim Gary, he knows of no Native American legends of bison above tree line. There certainly are no known reports from the white people. Previous studies in Colorado have also found no evidence of bison above tree line. It's likely that the bison died thousands of years ago and have been frozen since. The permanent snowfield may be thousands of years old. Never again will the snow maze exist, and never again will bison be preserved for future generations to study. Join me now for the sounds of cold. As the little deer mouse scurries through the hoarfrost, search, as I have often done, for the sounds of cold. Not the hybrid sounds shared with other seasons, wind, rain. Listen softly. Sounds of an eyelash on a parka hood can suffocate an acoustic winter experience. Lie down, put your ear to the snowpack, or after falling on your skis, listen closely. Does a snowflake striking the snowpack make a sound? Each species of snowflake has its own sound. Grapple, sharp, hard, distinct. Fluffy plates, muffled like a dropped pillow. Stellar crystals shimmering in your ear. Sastrugi forming, sand-like scrape of pepper-sized snow crystals. Ice freezing, the continuous shattering of crystal chandeliers. Settling snowpack, muffled whump that indicates an avalanche could be near. At 0 degrees Fahrenheit, nose hairs freeze. Then footsteps make a distinct squeaky crunch. At minus 35 degrees, trees freeze and shatter. The sound a sharp, splintering crack. Flesh freezes. For instance, the tip of the nose. When it does, it makes a dampening ping. Have you heard the sounds? Will you hear them anymore? Cold, snow, ice. Any more? Regretfully, my journey is but one of documentation, not solution. I wish that I had the solution to the climate warming problem, but do not. The best is for people to become joiners. Join a local, regional, or national, international conservation and climate warming organization. The joined world is powerful. Together we can act. Thank you for joining me on my journey through cold. I'm not sure how long we will be able to love cold, snow, ice. If you'd like to know more about cold, snow, and ice, try my book, Winter: An Ecological Handbook. It's available at our website, tracknature@gmail.com. To my traveling companions who have journeyed with me, some of whom have passed, this video is dedicated to you. To the few who have made 2 or more of these journeys, thank you, my friends.
Enchanted by the land of Yellowstone, Yellowstone.